Hello and welcome to our tutorial. So in the previous video, we created an activity where we said we're working on a login and registration application. Now we've just created our login form layout where we have an email address and a password and two buttons, one for login and one for register. So what we're going to do now is we are actually going to now make our register button take us to another activity. So maybe this is your first time being here, you don't know how to create an activity, you don't know how to do any, how to go from one activity to the other. This video would show you. But if you also want to, if maybe you stumble across this video by accident, you need to watch the previous video in order to understand how to create forms. But if you're only looking for how to navigate from one activity to the other, then this is the correct video for you. Okay, all right, let's get started. So we are going to create a new activity, and that activity is going to be our register activity. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to click on this package, com.example user login. You can also click on the Java. I'll click on that package because that's why I want to save the activity. Once you right click on it, you click on new, then you click on activity, and then you choose empty activity. So once you select empty activity, you'll be presented with this window where you'll be able to create your activity. So in this case, I'm going to call this register. And then it's going to create an activity layout for me. And then the source language is, of course, we're using Java. And when I click on finish, you will notice that it will build a new activity for me. It's created a class for me called register and an activity layout called activity register. So what we want to do is, for the purpose of this video, what we want to do is we just want to create a button. We just want to attach an action list of buttons. When the user clicks on it, we will be able to navigate from one page to the other. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my main activity. On the right-hand side, you can see that I've got my emulator open on the right-hand side, which you can do that also in other video where it would have popped up, but for this video, we've got it on the right-hand side. So what I'm going to do now is I am going to go back to my main activity. I'm currently in my main activity. Now, the first thing I need to do is, remember, we created some edit texts. I think we created the text view and also buttons. Now, in order for us to be able to attach a handler to our component, so let's say we want our email address and our password and our login and our register to have some sort of action or to do something with it, we first want to import some classes which will allow us to store or attach that handler to those components. So what we'll do is, because I had two edit texts, I'm going to create two edit text object variables. So edit text here. So I'm going to start typing in edit text. And once you start to type, Android Studio will automatically import for you an android.widget.edit text. So I think I named ours edit text, and I think we had email address, and then we added log to it. I'm going to create another one, edt password log. What I've done is I've just created two variables, which I'm going to store the information that's going to come from the email address and password. And I'm going to create a button. I'm going to import a button class. I'm going to call this btn login, and then btn, I think it was button. I'm going to add the log to it, and then btn register log. So Android Studio is telling me that I'll have to import this myself. So if I click Alt, Enter, import class, it will import a button for me, class for me. So now I'm going to go inside my onCreate method, and I'm going to find my component on the layout and attach it, and so that I'll be able to code with it. So to do that, I need to use this method called FindViewByID. This FindViewByID is similar to if you studied web development before, where you are able to get document.getElements by ID. Is quite similar. And then we need to look inside our R. The R stands for our resource folder, or it's a class code. It's a class that gives us access to our resource folder. And then what we're looking for is ID, because when we created our components, we gave them an ID, or views, we gave them an ID. So I'm going to do EDT email address log. So I found my layout component, and I'm going to store it inside EDTE email address log. And I'm going to do the same thing. I think FindViewByID's disappeared. I'm going to do the same thing for my password. Even though we're only creating, we're only making our button do something, I'm just creating these. I'm only creating these, this here, so that I don't have to do it later on. So then I'm going to do button. Again, I'm going to do the same thing for my buttons. FindViewByID, r.id.button login log, and then btn register log equals FindViewByID, r.id.button register log. Okay, so what I've done is I've basically found all my components in my layout so that I'll be able to code it in my Java file. So to be able to go from one activity to the other, we need to use a set on click listener. So how do you do that? Well, if you start to type in btn register log, because that's the button that we want to add, want an action to happen when we click on it. So button register log dot set on click listener, and then new view on click listener. This would, whenever we click on this button, we'll say that do something here. We've attached a click listener. So it's listening for a button dot register log click. And once we click on it, it will do something. So inside of here, what I'm going to introduce to you, if you're very, very new, is something called intent. Now, there are two types of intent. Intent is like an action or intent to do something. Now, we have two different types of intent. We have explicit intent, and then we have implicit intent. Explicit intent, intents are basically, let's say you intend to do something. What you do is that you send a packet to the Android command or whatever, to tell them that, listen, this is what I would like to do. And then the Android would obviously do whatever action you want it to do. So in this case, if you want a video on intent, I'll have a video on intent later on. So what we're going to do is we're going to create an explicit intent. Now, the difference between explicit and implicit is explicit intent is used when we know our end goal. Let's say, for example, you want to go from the main activity to the register activity. You specified, I want to go from the main activity to the register activity. That's an explicit, because you're explicitly telling that this is where I would like to go. Now, implicit is when you don't know where you want to go. So let's say, for example, you've downloaded a file onto your phone. And when you click on the file, you're being asked, what would you like to do? What application would you like to use to open this file? So that's an implicit. Another example is on WhatsApp. Now, when you click on, you want to share something with a user, you realize that WhatsApp gives you several social media applications that you'll be able to share that to, because you've implicitly specified that I want to share this to maybe to a social media, but you don't know which social medias are going to be available on your application. That is what implicit is. So implicit is usually used from one application to another application. Explicit is usually used for between one application. So what we're going to do to create an intent, we have to specify intent I equals new intent. And then what we have to pass in is the first argument is we have to pass in the context at which we're working from. So at the moment, we're working from the main activity. So main activity dot this, and then a comma. It takes in two arguments. And then the second bit is where we'd like to go. So we would like to go to the register dot class. And then that is just one part of it. So we've created an object, the intent class. Now, what we need to do is we need to start that intent, so start activity, pass in the I. So what we're doing is we're saying, once the user click on the button register, I want to navigate the user from main activity to the register, and the start activity just starts the activity. If you don't put this there, it will not start the activity. So in our case, if we now decide to press if we now decide to run our application again, so apply changes, and let's say we run our app. Let's wait for our app to run. We should be able to see our application running successfully. Or just while we wait for it to load, I'm just gonna pause the video because it might take a bit of time. Okay, so I believe that it's installing now and it's going to run it. Okay. Okay, so our application has our emulator has loaded. So let's try it. Let's say I click on register. You would see that our register button is working. It's taking us to our register activity, which has nothing at the moment, by the way. So that is that for this tutorial. In the next tutorial, what we're going to do is we are going to create our register activity layout. So I'll see you in the next video.